Shortly, right?
Should be live.
Right, 21.
It's about a minute behind.
Question for Daryl, if I might. I'm going to try and log in as a second ID on my mobile phone, so we can have the separate screens, if that's okay.
If you want to, the committee team will let you in when it comes in.
Try it now.
Now live.
We're live. Yeah, it's on the phone.
Right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of full council of Hart District Council in September. To begin with, please would committee managers do a roll call for members.
I will list out each of the councillors' names.
Ladder.
Councillor Am.
Present.
Councillor Axon.
Present.
Councillor Bailey.
Present.
Councillor Fluid.
Present.
Councillor Butler.
Present.
Councillor Clark.
Present.
Councillor Cockrell.
Present.
Councillor
Councillor
Crampton.
I
Crampton.
can see
Present.
us.
Councillor Crisp.
Present.
Councillor Crooks.
Yes, I'm here.
Councillor Davis.
Present. Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Very quiet.
I'll put my headset on. Thank you.
Councillor
I'm here. I think you said Delaney, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Councillor Dawn.
Yes, present.
Councillor Drake.
Present. Hi, everyone.
Councillor Palmer.
Present.
Councillor Ford.
Yes, good evening.
Councillor Connell.
Yes, I'm present.
Councillor Lamb.
Councillor Maitland.
I'm here just to let you know when you're on this side of the screen, it's cutting out, which is why a lot of the people aren't answering their names.
Oh,
Councillor Nate.
Present.
Councillor Oliver.
Present.
Councillor Quarterman.
Present. Good evening.
Present.
Councillor Radley.
Present.
Councillor Smith.
Present.
Councillor Southern.
Councillor who?
Southern.
Southern.
Yeah, I'm here.
Councillor Tom.
Present.
Councillor Wheel.
Some people are not speaking into their microphone properly.
Thanks, Tim.
Present. Councillor Wheel, present.
Councillor Ward.
Present.
Councillor Ward.
Present.
Councillor Wright.
Present.
Can I just ask if Councillor Harwood's name was read out?
it wasn't.
For Councillor Harwood.
Could you just deal for Councillor Lamb? Councillor Lamb.
Councillor Lamb is present. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
I would now like your agreement to suspend standing orders 9.3, which refers to show of hands for voting, 22.1, standing to speak, and 22.2, chairman standing. Rather than go laboriously through a vote, does anybody object to that?
No.
Right? Yes.
Members, can I remind you, could you please turn your microphones off unless you're asked to speak, please? Thank you.
And could I say also to the wider public, if they're watching, if they have any problems with streaming of this, could you let us know straight away via the chat function, rather than afterwards. Can we start with the minutes of held on July the 30th? I'm checking these for accuracy. Can I have a proposer and seconder, please?
I'll propose Councillor Warlock.
Councillor Warlock. Seconder.
Councillor Waterman seconds.
Waterman. Right. Again, could we have any objections to their accuracy? Unless anyone objects, I will sign them. Now, apologies for absence. He's already said, Councillor Harwood, yes. Any more? Declarations of interest. Anybody got interested in Claire?
Chairman,
Yes.
I have a declaration of interest as a Hampshire County Councillor.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Forster. Right. We have 2 questions received from members of the public. I'd now like to ask Mr. Matthew Knowles to put his question to Councillor. Mr. Knowles.
Mr. Knowles,
Hello, good evening.
can you speak up?
Yes, can you hear me?
Just about, but if you can speak up louder, that would be better.
Let me try and adjust my settings. Give me a moment, please. Can you hear me now?
Better, yes, thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Do you wish me to read the question or do you already know what it is?
We know what it is, but could you read it?
Yes, certainly. Thank you for the opportunity to ask you a question. Given the summer weather is soon to end and the closure is temporary, will the council now reopen it fully and undertake not to close it again before elections can be held to seek the opinion of the local electorate? Can you hear me?
Just. Did everybody hear that clearly? There's some echo, I know.
Chairman, can I ask members again, please will you go on to mute? Councillor Crisp, David Labour.
Just about, but if you can speak up louder, that would be better.
Try and adjust my settings. Give me a moment.
Can someone, can everyone go on to mute, please?
John, because there are so many, it's difficult to hear what they're saying. If they're saying anything, can you read it out from their particular question?
Okay. The question was, given the summer weather is soon to end and the closure of Fleet Road is temporary, will the council now reopen it fully and undertake not to close it again before elections can be held to seek the opinion of the local electorate? I would like to invite Councillor Cockerell to respond, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for advance notice of the question. The issue of Fleet Road pedestrianisation is obviously on the agenda to be debated this evening, with a motion that's being put forward. So it would be absolutely wrong for me at this stage to preempt what the council decides to do. I'm sure Mr. Knowles will be very interested in the progress and the final outcome of the vote. Obviously, as a member of the Cabinet, I will be guided by whatever full council chooses to do this evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Knowles, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, please.
Go on, please, go with it.
Thank you. I have lived in Fleet for more than 10 years. It's a great place to live. I'm sure you've all shared in that feeling of pride when the town has been voted the best place in the country to live several times. During that 10+ years, I never recall the police having to put in place a dispersal order for the Fleet Road area before. Do you believe, as I do, that this new and concerning development is due to the closure of Fleet Road and the lack of passing traffic to dissuade antisocial behaviour when the shops are closed on an evening?
Councillor Cockerell.
Again, thank you for the supplementary, Mr. Knowles. I have no evidence to say what has caused the police to issue dispersal orders. It's not something that I've been made aware of personally. Others may have more information, but I have no evidence to suggest that the pedestrianisation has had any effect in terms of people gathering as they should not be gathering. In fact, part of the whole reason for the pedestrianisation is to provide people in Fleet with enough space that they can shop and socialise socially distanced in a safe and COVID secure way. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I'd now like to invite Mr. Bruce Bulletin to put his question to Council. Is Mr. Bulletin here? Mr. Bruce Bulletin.
Bruce, come off mute.
All right. Have you got me now?
Hearing you loud and clear, yes.
Oh, great stuff. Excellent. Right. My main question is, would you agree that it's far too early to consider taking down the road closure in Fleet Town Centre on the basis that evidence shows that a significant number of independent traders, both within and outside of the pedestrianised area, are seeing an upturn in trade and have communicated this to the BID and other agencies? In addition, all of the evidence we have seen shows that there has been no significant detrimental impact on traffic flows in the surrounding area.
Again, I would like to ask Councillor Cockerell to respond.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, and again, thank you for advance notice of the question. I'm afraid my answer is going to be very similar to the previous answer to the previous question. I will be hoping to make an intervention into the debate later on this evening, and members of the council and members of the public will be able to gauge where what my position is in relation to pedestrianisation at that time. And again, I don't want to preempt what the council might decide to do later on. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Right. I invite Mr. Bulletin to have a supplementary if he wishes.
Yeah, I do have a supplementary. I think we've all seen that COVID-19 has accelerated high street decline. Footfall is down 50%, online shopping is at 30%, and many high street businesses will close. 67% of people have told us that they visited us less in early August than they did in February. So if you're a councillor planning to vote for the scheme to be removed before there's been time for it to be evaluated, to determine whether it's successful, what are your alternative plans to revive the high street in Fleet, and when will they be implemented?
Thank you. Again, Councillor Cockerell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A slightly rhetorical question and a rhetorical answer, I suspect, from members. What I will say is that as the portfolio holder for economic development, which falls under the place scheme or place portfolio, we are very keen to try and support all of the businesses in Fleet and the Hart area through this very challenging, very difficult economic situation, which seems only to be changing and you know, not very good for the next few months either. We'll be happy to look at any schemes that come forward, whether it be something similar to this pedestrianisation scheme or anything else that Fleet BID or other organisations think we can help with. So there is an open invitation to, at least virtually, come and talk to us about ideas that you think might help, and we will certainly do our best to facilitate those, as we have done, for example, with the recent street markets in Fleet High Street, which I gather have been some success. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Councillor Cockrell. There'll be no questions from members received. So we've gone to Chairman's announcements. I've got one small one, which is that, as some of you will have noticed, I haven't nominated any charities for this year because of little point, because the only money flowing into it is the Hart Lottery, which I'd encourage you all to join. And as such, you know, I must wait until the COVID thing is improved before nominating charity. We then start to organise events. Right, now Cabinet members' announcements. Councillor Neighbour, do you have any announcements?
Good evening, Chairman. I have no announcements tonight.
The Cabinet member for Finance and Corporate Security Services, Councillor Radley. Councillor Radley?
I actually have one announcement, Mr. Chairman. It's
Right.
to do with community safety. The current shared community safety team will be dissolved at the end of September. Each of the 3 authorities will have their own in-house team with effect from the 1st of October. One of the key benefits of this is that it enables us to target our own priorities rather than competing with the priorities and therefore resources which may be different of the other 2 councils. We are excited to launch our own service, which will consist of a community safety lead officer, and we have Rachel Wilkinson joining us. She has worked in the shared team and will be stepping into this lead role at Hart. There will be a shared analyst role between the 3 authorities, an officer who prepares the strategic assessment and can analyse crime and disorder data on our behalf. The team will report directly to the head of community services. The service will focus on our local priorities around safeguarding, tackling antisocial behaviour, dealing with the challenges around prevent and modern day slavery, and of raising awareness of community safety and developing district-wide initiatives to support this. The North Hampshire Community Safety Partnership will continue. There will be one joint community safety partnership plan because many of the partners are cross-border, so it is sensible to continue this approach. There is a legal agreement, a memorandum of understanding to support all the joint working. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Radley. Next, we come to Cabinet Member for Digital, Councillor Hambler.
Thank you, Chairman. I have no announcements for tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hambler. Now the Cabinet Member for Community, Councillor Bailey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 2 announcements from me this month. First, to give an update on the hub. The Hart Response Hub is continuing to provide support to our local residents in partnership with the County Council and our network of volunteers. Since it was established earlier this year, over 420 residents have been referred through the Hants for Vulnerable hotline. We're working to transition the hub to Hart Voluntary Action at the end of the month, but we'll continue to support them with complex cases via the housing team and through the provision of urgent food parcels if needed via the parking team. And secondly, most members will be aware that there was a serious fire at Wickham Place recently. There's a great partnership working between our own housing team and Vivid Housing Association. The fire affected 6 households and all residents were booked into the Premier Inn by midnight. And the homelessness team have been working with each household and moving them into alternative housing. We did the booking and support, but Vivid are picking up the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey. And no one was injured in the fire?
No.
Right, okay.
Chairman, I have a question.
Yes. Go on, Councillor Forster.
Thank you, Chairman. For Councillor Bailey on that statement, I'm aware that there have been a lot of minor fires which I believe were attributed to arson, bin fires, etc. in that area. is there any link known of between this major fire and previous incidents? And if so, what will be done about it?
Thank you, Councillor Forster. Sorry, Chairman.
Sorry.
Oh, right, no, sorry. No, thank you for that question, Councillor Forster. I'm not aware of any link, but I'm not aware because nobody's raised it with me. So I will investigate and I'll come back to you.
Right. Councillor Forster. Councillor Radley, you have a question.
If it will help, I believe it was a chip pan fire that was responsible.
Thank you for that information. Okay. Sure as how this can spread. Cabinet Member for Police, Councillor Cochrane.
No announcements from me, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Cabinet Member for Regulatory, Councillor Kinnell.
Yes, I have two announcements this evening. I'd like to advise members that we have received formal acceptance of Hart's 2020 Air Quality Status Report from DEFRA. The report is on the Hart website for those who'd like to take a look, and confirms that the quality of air, again, in our district has once again met all the UK recommendations regarding NO2 concentration levels, falling below the national limits at all measurement sites. And my second announcement, just from the licensing perspective, or the licensing part of my portfolio, for those of you who aren't aware, from this evening, pubs in England will need to close by 10 p.m. to mitigate the rising COVID numbers. And that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kinnell. Now the Cabinet Member for Environment, Councillor Oliver.
No announcements from me this evening, Chairman.
And the Cabinet Member for Commercialisation, Councillor Quarterman.
Yes, I do have one announcement to make this evening. I'm pleased to announce that Hart District Council has engaged the services of a team to conduct an appraisal of the options for the redevelopment of the civic quarter containing the Hart District Council offices in Fleet. Led by surveyors Montague Evans and including architects HLM, cost consultants Gleeds and community engagement specialists Create Streets, the team will enable the cross-party working group to assess the viability of potential solutions and will make recommendations for future development. We expect a full report to be available early in 2021. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Quarterman.
I have a question, Chairman.
Yeah.
Very pleased that the council or the cabinet members have decided with a working group to look at regeneration of the civic quarter. Will that extend to the Fleet High Street area? And in particular, I have one specific question. Following the debacle over Gurkha Square, can the cabinet member confirm that Gurkha Square will be saved?
So there's 2 points in that question. The first one about the scope of the redevelopment project and whether it will extend to the high street. Primarily, we are looking at the assets that are owned by Hart District Council. So that's the actual offices and some of the surrounding buildings. That would not currently include the high street. However, if a development proposal, a viable development proposal was put to us that included development of other assets outside of the council's immediate ownership, then we would consider it under the scope of the working group. On your second question about whether Gurkha Square will be saved, we haven't made specific provision in our stipulation to the surveyors that it cannot be touched in any way, but we are aware of the public sensitivity of the square, and the cross-party working group will, I'm sure, take that into account when it's looking at any proposals that come forward.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you.
I take that as a no for both then. Thank you.
Right, now the item 9, Joint Chief Executive announcements. Do you have anything to announce?
Yes, Chairman. Councillors, you'll be aware of the evolving picture with regard to COVID-19 and the changes since Monday, and the move by the alert stage back to level 4, and of course the announcement by the Prime Minister on Tuesday about increased preventative measures, with the assumption that these will go on for a further 6 months or so. Based on this, obviously, there's been quite a lot of work across Hampshire as to how should the local authorities respond to the changing circumstances, and we worked through the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Local Resilience Forum, which has met, and the decision has been taken at the forum to move the Category 1 organisations, the main organisations, backwards into what's called the response mode or the response phase. Based on this, Hart will be following suit, and we too are moving back into the response phase, as this helps ensures that we can now start preparing and go to a level of preparedness to enable us to react as circumstances change. As part of this, we are working on putting in place a vision that allows us to get payments out to low income, which is part of the new arrangement from the government, particularly those who need to socially isolate. These must be in place by the 12th of October, with payments to eligible residents from the 28th of September. That's the announcement from the government at the weekend. We are waiting for further guidance, which hopefully will be out tomorrow, so we can actually make sure the arrangements are correct. And this builds upon the early announcement and work currently happening at pace that councils will need to be ready for a further potential business grant availability in the event of a lockdown. Again, that work is underway. Members will also be aware that there's now a legal obligation to maintain records of staff and visitors to buildings, public buildings, including display of the new QR codes from the app that's been released by NHS today. The powers of enforcement laid before Parliament this week give the powers to the County Council and the unitary authorities, not district councils. However, you'll appreciate we've been already active in this space, providing guidance to our business newsletter, as well as our social media streams, and our environmental health teams will be out and about, encouraging and educating business locally on these new requirements.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Right. Oh, Councillor Southern, you have a question?
I do
Councillor
indeed. This word QR has been bandied around for a long time. What does it actually mean?
Good question. Mr. Phillips?
I'm sure someone who's got technical knowledge of computers and software, etc., might be able to help us there.
Quick response.
Go ahead.
If you like, Chairman.
Yes, please, Councillor Dawn.
A QR code is effectively a two-dimensional barcode. It looks like a lot of little squares all together. Your handheld device can read that and translate it into a URL to take you directly to a website. You can also put other stuff through them in the same way you can with a barcode.
That's not the question I asked. What does QR stand for?
Quick response.
Quick
I think
response.
somebody said that earlier.
Nobody listens to me.
Okay.
For anybody who is not computer literate, and I'm reasonably computer literate, that doesn't mean anything.
Well, people know what it is.
All I'm
anyway.
asking for is what is the purpose of the QR code? It is not clear.
Well, I don't think that's a question of this meeting, actually. You could ask. Yeah.
Councillor Southern, I will drop you a note and send you an example, if that would be helpful.
Or you can ask.
Examples. I'm not interested in examples. I'm asking what it's all about. QR has been bandied around all over the place, and I frankly don't.
Well, you could ask the Minister of Health, because it's a part of his thing. But Councillor Radley, I think you might be able to help us.
The intention is that when you go into a building, you scan the quick response code or the QR code, and that associates you in the app with being in a particular location, so that at a future date, if at a similar time somebody who subsequently tests positive for COVID had been in that building around the same time as you, the app or the track and trace, well, not the track and trace people, but the app will be able to notify you that you may have become contaminated and you may be requested to self-isolate for a period of 14 days.
Thank you, Councillor Radley.
Thank you. Right, now minutes of committees. We go through the stage by stage. Does anybody have any questions on the meeting of Cabinet on the 6th of August? No? Move on to the Planning Committee of 12th of August. Overview and scrutiny on the 18th of August. Audit on the 21st of August. And Cabinet on the 3rd of September. Right, okay. We now come to item 11, motion. This is an issue which has been controversial in many areas up and down the nation, as the government has encouraged and paid for councils to find ways of helping businesses to recover from the hits they have taken and are still taking from the coronavirus, particularly this week for the lockdown. In many ways, it's more properly an issue for Fleet Town Council, but it has landed in our laps to decide, or rather to technically request Hampshire County Council to dismantle the scheme or not. This is because the government commissioned HCC to administer the schemes, and they, of course, oversee the roads throughout the county. Hampshire County Council will accede to whatever we resolve on this issue, as they acceded to the urging when we decided in July that we take it up. At first, this seemed to be a matter of balancing the interests of the businesses, who might be thought to favour it, against those of residents in surrounding streets who would be less keen, but it turned out to be a lot more complicated than that. I also thought it would be useful to have brief summaries of the pros and cons for people directly affected by the scheme, but was advised that this would be against the Constitution, outside people bodies actually involved in the debate. It's nevertheless an important issue for Fleet, and I hope that we can have a reasonable expression of views without letting it become too much of political football. Councillor Crampton, can I now ask you to introduce the motion?
Thank you, Chairman. The motion is, despite great efforts and good intentions from all involved, it's now abundantly clear that the closure of Fleet High Street has not been a success. The negative impact on residents, particularly those living near the closure, of traffic congestion and the resulting pollution has not been outweighed by any appreciable benefits to businesses. This council therefore resolves to have the road closures removed and to reopen the High Street as soon as possible. And Chairman, my explanation for this motion, it's been brought to the council following councillors and our MP receiving many emails from residents finding that this pedestrianisation had such a negative impact on their lives that they felt compelled to raise their objections as strongly and as loudly as they could. No real canvassing of opinion had been carried out, so of course the next logical step was to send out a survey, which we did. We had 350 replies, mainly but not exclusively from Fleet Central and Fleet East, which are of course the areas most affected by the closure. 81% we found were against. Subsequently, our MP, Ranil Jayawardena, had sent out a petition which has now over 1,000 signatures. And the petition was asking that pedestrianisation be removed. Businesses along the High Street have also been asking for it to be removed. led by one of our most prominent and long-established businesses in Fleet, a number of businesses have lobbied councillors for the removal of the scheme. In the face of so much opposition, it was logical to bring the motion. I therefore move the motion. Thank you, Chairman.
We have a seconder.
I'd like to second, please, Chairman.
Right. Councillor Dawn, seconds the motion.
Thank you.
Yes, okay.
Fine. Literally.
Well, first of all, I can ask if anybody's got any questions on the motion, not debate, but questions. No? Okay. We're going to debate. Councillor Cockerell.
Thank you. At the head of the queue. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah. I'll lower my hand electronically. Right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will just touch upon 4 key points which I believe we should consider when deciding which way to vote this evening. Mr. Chairman, we debated this scheme at the last meeting when full council gave its endorsement to the work done by myself, along with fellow cabinet members and ward councillors. Yet here we are again with a motion drafted weeks later decrying the scheme for its apparent failure. Clearly, this motion cannot have taken account of the evidence before us this evening because the evidence was still being collected. Yet the movers of this motion should have waited for the evidence to become available and then considered whether it supported their hypothesis before bringing it back to full council. I remind members, Mr. Chairman, that the purpose of the scheme is to provide shoppers with a safe, COVID-secure shopping environment in Fleet and help the retailers, cafes and other businesses in the town to survive the current economic crisis. Similar schemes have been put in place around Hampshire and across the country. Some have been successful, others less so. We have been, quite rightly, collecting and analysing data from a range of sources which members have seen. The decision about the future of the scheme should be made solely on the basis of whether it is achieving its aims based upon the evidence trail before us. Any analyst will tell you that it is a mistake to look at just one set of data when making decisions. You need to see what the data trends are before you can make a truly informed decision. We will soon be in a position to see what those data trends are. So I would ask full council to allow us to wait until we have the trends and make an informed, evidence-led decision on the scheme's future. I would also remind members, Mr. Chairman, that this is a pop-up scheme which has flexibility built into it. We have identified some issues during the implementation phase and we can address those if the scheme is allowed to continue. For example, we have identified where additional disabled parking bays can go to prevent the scheme from disadvantaging those with mobility difficulties. We've also discussed within the working group whether the pedestrianisation could be time restricted to allow for deliveries to take place. There are always problems when implementing these types of schemes because reality is not always as it seems on paper. If we pull the scheme now, we have no chance to make any improvements necessary, which may very well lead to a more successful scheme. And finally, I just referred to the working group, Mr. Chairman, which is a cross-party group of members representing Fleet and the wider district. I would ask that the council allow us to take this decision back into the working group. I'm saddened, frankly, Mr. Chairman, at the way that certain members in moving this motion have dealt with this issue. I believe we can do this through the working group, looking effectively at the data and not allow this to become a party political issue. Please, Mr. Chairman, I would implore the council to let us get on with looking at the evidence and make a proper informed decision at the appropriate time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Cockerell. Councillor Quarterman, do you have a... Councillor Quarterman? Sound.
Sorry, I am now unmuted.
Good.
So I absolutely understand the concern and the difficulty of the situation that this is causing, and I have every sympathy with the opinions that we've heard, and we've heard quite a few. However, it is quite clear that opinion is split. We are hearing conflicting reports. We're hearing some people who are reporting on the success of the scheme and others who are reporting on the challenges and difficulties of the scheme. So like the previous speaker, my concern is that an opportunity to make a change that could be a longer term improvement for residents, for businesses and the environment could be blocked by voices raising concerns, even if they are legitimate and sincerely held, before the opportunity to see the improvement. It is unfortunately the case that in many cases such as this, the negative impacts tend to be seen immediately, whereas the positive impacts take more time to become evident. So I would argue that more time is needed for evidence. And we also need to be confident that the perceived negatives are genuinely due to the pedestrianisation scheme and not the result of the many other challenging influences that we've seen this year. So in the light of that, I would like to propose an amendment to the motion. And I propose the following amendments. I would like to remove the phrase "it is now abundantly clear" and replace that with the phrase "there is a concern." I would like to insert the phrase "to traffic" after the words "Fleet High Street." I would like to remove the sentence "the negative impact on residents, particularly those living near the closure of traffic congestion and the resulting pollution, has not been outweighed by any appreciable benefits to businesses." Remove that sentence, and then after the phrase "this council therefore resolves," I would like to insert the following: to actively engage with retailers to understand and assess the nature of their concerns, and to physically observe at peak times the impact of traffic on neighbouring roads. If compelling and verifiable evidence gathered indicates that the benefit to retailers does not outweigh any negative impact on businesses or residents, then this council requests Cabinet to have the road closures removed and to reopen the high street to traffic as soon as is practically possible, and no later than the end of October, in sufficient time to support the Christmas trading period. Now, I have sent a draft of that proposed amendment to committee services, and I hope they are able to display that to members.
Yes, but you have a second for your amendment.
Yes, point of order, Chairman. Point of order, Chairman.
Yes.
I believe those amendments are so fundamental to changing the motion that they are no longer, or that it would no longer be the motion as originally proposed, and it therefore does not comply with the amendments policy in the council's constitution. Therefore, I believe that should be discounted.
Can I take advice on that?
Don't you stop the theme?
Stop the theme. Well, put up the. Do we on? Discuss this with Mr. Phillips, and we feel that it is an amendment. I mean, it's, when you cut through everything, it is amending the motion, really, it's putting it back to our month, which I think is within the terms of an amendment. So, moving on from there, do we have a seconder for it?
Yes, I'd like to second it, Chairman.
Who is?
Councillor Wildsmith.
Councillor Wildsmith, right, okay. Right.
Sorry, could the amendment be read out in full, please? The whole new motion be read out in full, please?
Should be coming up on the screen, yes.
Not sure what screen we'll see it on.
While we wait for that to turn up, can we just have someone clarify if audio is still available on the live feed?
It was when it is now. Councillors, yes, it's been turned back on.
Chairman, whilst we're waiting, may I use this juncture to request a recorded vote on this and any other votes on this topic, please?
Yes. Well, have you got seconders and in spite of them?
I'll second that, Chairman. 28 Peace Brown.
And Crampton, I'll second that. I'll third that.
I'll fourth, Councillor Farmer.
Fifth. Can somebody fifth it?
Councillor
I'm
Wheel.
happy to support it.
Yeah, Chairman, I'll support it as well. Councillor Axel.
Okay, fine. We're fine then. Right. This is the result of the amendment, showing that it's got the tracking in there as well. And next, I think, can we show the amended motion without tracking and crossings out? Thank you. Right. So the amended motion is as in front of you. And we have Councillor Crampton.
Thank you, Chairman. I disagree. I am sorry. I disagree with the advice you've been given. This takes us back to the original proposal that was voted on in July to make it a temporary pedestrianisation, and that it would be reviewed at some stage. So we've gone back to the original motion that was passed in July, which you know is not the intention at all. It's negative to our motion, and therefore I really, really don't believe this should be allowed.
Thank you, Councillor Crampton. Right, Councillor Wildsmith.
I've taken my hand down, sorry, Chairman.
Right, okay. Councillor Blewett. Councillor Blewett. Councillor Smith. Councillor Smith?
I wasn't aware that I had my hand raised.
Councillor Forster. Right.
Councillor Dawn's.
Okay.
Chairman, Councillor Wheel had her hand up before me, but I also have my hand up, please.
So, Chairman, just to help.
Can you hear me with this on? Can you hear me?
Chairman, it's meant to be Councillor Dawn next, but we'll take Wheel.
Right, okay. Councillor Dawn.
No, sorry.
Thank you, Chairman. Just reading through what's been proposed here, I fully support Councillor Crampton in the fact that it completely tries to undermine the intent of our motion, and that really is quite contrary to effectively democratic process. It's basically outrageous. This puts us forward into more activity. It does not take us to a decision, and that is fundamental to the way the motion is worded this evening. And I believe we should reject it, and we should disagree with the advice that we've been given. It's wrong.
Right, I will take other councillors' contributions first. Councillor Wheel.
Go.
Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Wheel.
Yes, I know. I'm on now. Can you hear me okay with this on?
Yeah.
Don't want to give anything to my neighbour here. I've actually spent quite a lot of time talking to residents and shoppers and shopkeepers, and I've been going up into Fleet Town Centre every day. I think today made me really make my mind up that the actual main road, which has made it easier for people to walk on, I was up there for over an hour and only saw one person walking on that road. Everybody else was still walking on pavements. So I have no problems about that being taken out.
Councillor Radley.
So if I may start by just simply addressing Councillor Crampton's concern, I don't believe that this motion as amended has reversed the negative intent of the first motion. It has simply augmented it with additional clauses, and therefore I think it is consistent with our constitution. But that's not actually what I put my hand up originally to say. People remember I was one of the ones who voted against implementing this scheme a month ago, and my views haven't sufficiently changed much. And so instinctively, I would agree with the motion that we should withdraw the scheme immediately. However, good governance isn't based on responding to instinct. It is about making informed decisions based upon evidence. And therefore, as amended, and because we have the opportunity of having now trialed the scheme, evidence is available, I think it would be disingenuous of us to simply pull the scheme without going out and actively acquiring evidence and analysing it. However, this council absolutely must be proactive in going out and getting good, verifiable evidence. And that means, as a sense of urgency, talk to the retailers directly on a one-to-one basis and understand their concerns. And where they say it's not working, listen to them and understand why it's not working. And then have a look at the traffic impacts on the parallel roads. And yes, please go out at peak times and see what the impact is at peak times. And then we can make a balanced decision as to whether or not the scheme is benefiting retailers or the benefit is outweighed by detrimental impacts. But we have the opportunity to respond to the evidence and not on instinct. Instinctively, I'd pull it now, but I think realistically, in interest of good governance, we need to review the evidence. So please, council, go out, get the evidence as soon as possible, bring it forward, and let's make a decision one way or the other to end this uncertainty. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Radley. Councillor Forster, you have a point to make.
I have a few points to make. Thank you, Chairman. First thing is I would agree with Councillor Dawn and Councillor Crampton that this fundamentally changes it. So I register my discontent with the changes. It is abundantly clear, and the flim flam that others are talking about, there's a lack of evidence. We're 4 weeks in. The evidence has been provided on a fortnightly basis. There was meant to be a 3-week review, which still hasn't happened. It was delayed, I understand, by Councillors Cockrell and Councillor Oliver. till after this meeting, which I find absolutely awful. The residents in roads affected from Eltham Heath Way through Eltham Road, and in particular Albert, Clarence and Connaught, are really, really suffering. It's not about the businesses, and trying to put the onus on the businesses is one way of trying to take away the need and urgency of actually supporting residents in Fleet Central. This decision was made by all councillors, but I think the majority of councillors in Fleet Central and in Fleet are now against this carrying on. If they aren't, I'm amazed, because they won't have residents voting for them in the future, because they aren't delivering what their residents want. It is abundantly clear. 1,000 signing a petition, a formal petition, which I submitted, is quite remarkable in that short time frame. 350 responses to a survey that was put out, which had the opportunity for them to comment favourably or unfavourably, is evidence. The data on traffic flows shows that traffic flows have nearly trebled on Albert Street, and HGV transits are higher by a significant margin. They're not following the 10.6 mile detour to do a 0.3 mile journey. Interestingly, the impact on business was such that a good number of businesses, whether it's 30 or 60, depending on who you believe, have said it's harming their business. 3 have already said it's likely to make them close, and any delay will exacerbate that, as well as impacting those residents. It's not about traffic at peak times, it's about traffic all the time. Traffic that used to go up Fleet Road is now going up other roads at 3 o'clock in the morning. They're having deliveries at 6 o'clock in the morning. It's unacceptable completely. And if councillors outside Fleet try to support this ridiculous motion to delay it, they will be responsible. We need Fleet councillors to vote, and everyone else ideally could consider suspending their vote and abstaining, or actually more positively support the original motion and defeat this motion. I cannot support this motion. It is a farce.
Thank you, Councillor Forster. Councillor Axon.
Thank you, Chairman. I was one of those councillors who voted for this scheme, and I did so on the basis simply that this was an opportunity for us to try and see if we could help businesses. I totally disagree with what Councillor Forster just said. This is not all about businesses. I thought that the idea of trying to create an environment in which people could shop and encourage people to come back into the town and hopefully dwell and spend more time was one of the principal objectives. I appreciate that there are lots of different views, but I think, as Councillor Radley has tried to say, we have to give this some time. I found it quite disgraceful that a group of a political group would look so soon after we'd passed a motion which was voted for by this full council, and it was cross-party. Not all parties had the same view. There were members from both the community campaign group, Lib Dems and the Conservatives, who thought that we should give this a try. And so politically motivated, so soon after we've done that, to put a motion forward before we've given the scheme a chance to see whether it works or not, I think is really totally wrong. So I totally disagree with what Councillors Crampton, Dawn and Forster have said. I think what we're trying to do here with this new motion is to give ourselves a bit of time, get the data, get sufficient data, and we will do what the people want. We as a council are their representatives, and we will. And if the evidence is clearly there that it is harming businesses and it is not doing what it's set out to do, then we should have to take the opportunity to pull it. Clearly, any changes of this magnitude was going to have negative impacts on people around the roads, Albert Street, Clarence Road, Connaught Road, Branksome Road, and all of those roads, clearly they were going to be negatively impacted. So it's not, not surprising what Councillor Forster says, that these people who have, as I understand, most of them were from that area, to say that they were not happy with the scheme. But we must give ourselves some time. If we take the decision tonight to pull this scheme so soon, we would have lost an opportunity. What we're trying to do with this motion is very clearly something very simple. Give us some time, and we are making a commitment that if it doesn't deliver what it was set out to do, then we will do what is absolutely essential, which is to pull the scheme. We must support this motion. I certainly will be supporting this motion. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Axon. Now, Councillor Davies.
Thank you, Chairman. I think, as many of you know, I have been from the start very vocal in my concern about the scheme, and that's come as a result of speaking with many retailers along Fleet Road, and also speaking to many residents and being received many emails. I'm very conscious that this is a very divisive subject, and increasingly I've seen that opinion has been very split on this. Instinctively, I feel that it is a scheme that we should be pulled. I agree with Councillor Radley, which is why I voted against it initially, but I've also received a lot of emails in support of pedestrianisation. I feel that we have data that supports and challenges the current scheme. I feel very strongly that it's a huge shame that this has become a political issue. I think the Conservatives have very cynically taken the subject of pedestrianising Fleet Road at a time when things are very difficult and challenging anyway, and they have effectively turned it into a political football, and they have created a campaign with it, and that is absolutely no way to play with people's livelihoods in the way they have. I think as a councillor, it's my duty to follow good governance and to follow the data and not just play to the popularist view. On that basis, I am willing to wait for more reliable, meaningful and quantifiable data that we can actually use in an actionable way to do something with. I have been asking for some time that we have data that defines success and failure with clear KPIs that feed into that. I am not satisfied in any way that the data that we have so far reflects that. And as I said, there is data in support of the scheme and against the scheme. I will personally be lobbying to have that data available to us within the next 10 days. I feel that nobody has sufficiently taken that point of view to heart and demanded that. If I feel that the data that we see is not reliable and meaningful and actionable, or actually clearly shows that the scheme is not working, I will be the first to say that we should pull it. But I'm following the role of being a good councillor, following good governance, and effectively following the evidence and the data, rather than just playing to the popularist view. Because at the end of the day, this is not a political football. This is a really important topic, and we should treat it as such. Thank you.
Councillor Davies. Mr. Phillips would like to.
Sorry, Chairman, I've been reminded, and I was waiting for an opportunity. You haven't yet accepted the amendment. The discussion is only about whether you should accept the amendment, and you need to vote on whether the amendment becomes the motion. So a lot of you are having discussion about the motion if it were to have to be amended. So I can see there's a number of people want to speak, but I think at the moment, can you keep it to, do you want to accept the amendment and then move to get back on the vote and then get the discussion on the motion itself if it's amended? Sorry, it's a bit of a technical issue, but as you rightly said, we haven't yet accepted the amendment yet. You're still discussing whether you should be accepting the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Councillor Blewett.
Thank you, Chairman. I wanted to visit the Fleet High Street temporary pedestrianisation scheme and Albert Street on selected occasions and confer with a typical trader who objects to the scheme. I also wanted to read email evidence, including the contributions from Fleet Business Improvement District and a group of traders. Incidentally, I noticed this evening that one of the traders who was on that list is in favour of the scheme, so he was wrongly included in the list, and that rather muddies the waters. On my Saturday morning visit for a couple of hours, I witnessed a very well attended shopping session which made good use of the increased space available and was a good shopping experience, helped by attractions which added to that experience. My shopping in and near the scheme area, especially the convenience shop, which is host to the post office, was intended to encourage shops which had suffered from the initial response to the scheme, to the closure. I was there again shopping on Monday afternoon and observed the footfall was quite good and compared with my observations at Queensmead on that morning. I attended once again on Wednesday afternoon and found it relatively quiet then. I found the traffic in Albert Street reasonable, bearing in mind it is a semi-commercial road. We need as much evidence as possible from the public and traders so that we can make an informed decision in the best interests of Fleet and elsewhere in the district. If September had one more day, we would have had another week of precious evidence at the business end of this experiment, which had been prompted to provide social distancing space. It is clear that there is still much opposition from traders based on their previous footfalls and the perceived threat to the traditional ethos of Fleet High Street. It is also clear that there's still significant opposition from residents. Some have experienced local traffic problems related to or exacerbated by the scheme. There may be solutions or mitigations to these problems. There is, however, support from many people of the pedestrianisation. There will have to be sufficient reduction of the opposition to the scheme if to be viable in the long term, if made permanent. There may be a case for continuing.
Councillor Blewett.
Have I gone too long?
Yeah. Yes. Is that finished? Because
I'm just about to finish. There may be a case for continuing at least for weekends while COVID-19 remains a threat.
Thank you.
I'll finish there.
Thank you. Councillor Farmer, can I ask each of you following this, because we've still got about half a dozen people speak, would you bear in mind Mr. Phillips's advice in the morning? So anyway, Councillor Farmer.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. First of all, I want to agree with Councillors Crampton, Forster and Dawn. I believe that this amendment is contrary to Standing Order 17.6. Any amendment may not have the effect of being a direct negative. This kicks things into the long grass, moves us away from a decision and moves us to a review of a temporary scheme, which is where we started after the motion back in July. So I just want to register that point first of all. There have also been various comments about lack of data. We have got data. We have responses from the Fleet Mail or the Fleet Road email, which indicates a significant number of residents and businesses opposed to this scheme. As Councillor Crampton said, the Conservative group, because there was no consultation and because we wanted to verify the word of mouth, anecdotal evidence and social media comment on the situation with the pedestrianisation, we undertook a survey. We leafleted over 6,200 properties and received responses from 1 in 18 properties over a month, with a clear 81% against the scheme, 81% of residents against the scheme. The responses, 86% of the responses were from across Fleet wards, central, east and west. There's been evidence of increase in traffic, which Councillor Forster alluded to. We've seen that data as well. And I've been out on the high street and I've spoken to businesses, and yes, there are some people, and it's great news that they are benefiting, but there are an increasing number of businesses who have put their name forwards to say that their views are not being represented and their business is being decimated on the high street. I've heard stories of sales reducing from, say, 100% level pre-lockdown to 80% when we came back, and their business being halved since literally the introduction of pedestrianisation. And while events might appear to be attracting people into the centre of Fleet and potentially could be a good idea, they're also indicating that those events are even further reducing their level of sales. So businesses are objecting, are worried about their existence and their livelihoods, and local residents are clearly against. We have the evidence. It's clear that there have been issues with the scheme. It's clear that the benefits, if indeed there are significant benefits, are far outweighed by the downsides. And we should move to remove this scheme and not to kick it further out and impose more misery on local businesses and local residents while we sit here waiting for more data when we have clear data that there is a problem as things stand right now. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Funk. Councillor Oliver. Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Sorry, just coming off of mute. Yeah, I wanted to just speak in support of the amendment to the motion, because I think we've gone off the point here into prepared speeches. I would support this amendment to the motion primarily because I think the previous motion was prepared in haste and in advance of any data being available. It was bad enough to see our MP being filmed on the first day of its opening saying how disastrous it was, because I think that shows a predisposition to making sure they wanted it to fail. And I would also remind councillors to look at the data we already have, because people have said it supports the issue of traffic chaos. Well, if you just take one piece of evidence and that people like to overlook, if you look at, for instance, Connaught Road, and look at the data that's been supplied by Hampshire, and I have no reason to think that Hampshire County Council or its members would fix such data, that the traffic flows in Connaught Road at this moment with pedestrianisation is equivalent to the 2008 traffic flows that were measured there. People can just look at the data. Okay, so I think there are people jumping to conclusions far too quickly with this. And as a point, I do apologise to members for not having the traffic data to them earlier, but we've had great difficulty. And in fact, Hampshire County Council have refused to give us the summary data that they use to make their own decision, because they say we only paid for us to actually collect detailed data. So they're not playing, shall we say, fair with us, and there may be some skullduggery going on with Hampshire. But I would support this amendment primarily because we will be able to get to the truth of the matter rather than some of these pre-prepared positions that are driving us to pull out the scheme immediately.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Councillor Wildsmith.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Can I just get clarification? Because from what we're saying, we're meant to be giving reasons at the moment of if we're accepting this motion, or are we actually are we actually debating it?
Well, we are just seeing whether we accept it, but opinions of views that read far and wide.
Okay.
Mr. Phillips.
Yeah, sorry, Councillor Wildsmith, if I could just make it clear. You're debating whether the amendment should be accepted as part of the motion. Bear in mind that the mover of the original motion doesn't agree to the amendment. So the motion is still, the existing motion is still standing. All you're saying is, do you agree to change the motion? That's all that should be really be debated at the moment. After you agree, if you agree to change the motion, then obviously you should have the debate, but we've jumped some hurdles. But at the moment, you haven't yet accepted the amendment for debate. So we've gone well beyond the amendment, but you ought to go back to really say, do you want this amendment part of the debate? Then you consider whether the new amended motion is acceptable. It's a procedural issue, but it's something we need to run with.
Okay, well, on that point then, I'd say it is perfectly acceptable for the amendment. The initial motion we had was putting a defined time on when the scheme should be removed. The amendment goes through to do the same thing, but just adding some finer details into it with clarification of data. The motion council voted on last time was an open-ended motion. The temporary traffic order was for 12 months, so the scheme could have run on for 12 months. We're now putting a definitive date on at the end of October for a final decision to be made. So I do not think it goes as a complete negative to the proposed motion.
Thank you, Councillor Wildsmith. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. If I'm correct, the scheme hasn't yet been fully implemented. There are some changes still in the pipeline. So it seems to me to be premature to terminate the scheme. So I think the motion should be changed, should be accepted.
Thank you. Bailey. Councillor Bailey.
Thank you, Chairman. I will speak on the reason why I view it is an amendment, and I think whether you look at the motion or the amendment, both are instructing or advising Cabinet, I can't remember the wording, to withdraw the scheme. One is doing it on the basis of some more evidence, and if the evidence doesn't show that it's giving the necessary improvements, it's giving a deadline that scheme should be withdrawn no later than the end of October. And I think, you know, the scheme has been up and running for just a few weeks, and I think an extra few weeks to make sure that what would be quite a significant decision is the right thing. So in my view, I'm comfortable that the ruling that the chairman has made with advice from officers that this is an amendment that we can debate is legitimate. Obviously, those who don't want the scheme to be removed have the opportunity to vote down what would become the amended motion if the amendment's accepted, or indeed the original motion if the amendment isn't accepted. So you know, I'm comfortable that I can vote or not vote for the amendment. So I don't know how long we're going to keep talking about the amendment. Whether we can have a quick view, Chairman, whether we can have a vote fairly soon on that, and then we can get to the substantial part of the merits of the scheme.
We should do. But I'll just take one more question, one more view from Councillor Makepeace-Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to echo Councillor Bailey, I believe the amendment is legitimate according to our Joint Chief Exec and our Chairman, and I believe we should accept it and we should go ahead to debate it. Thank you.
Right. Can we have recorded vote, I think, on whether we should accept this amendment?
I shall read the name.
Louder.
Councillor
Or
what?
I can't hear anything.
No, we can't hear. When the officer speaks, we cannot hear what she says. Darryl, Mr. Phillips needs to read out the list.
You start again.
Yes.
Sorry, Chairman, it's Councillor Crooks here. Can I be absolutely clear what it is we're voting on right now? We're not voting to accept. We're not voting on the amendment. We're voting to decide to debate the amendment. That's correct, yes?
That is correct, yes.
Yes, that is correct, Councillor Crooks. So, I'm going to go through the list again. Councillor Ambler.
For.
Are you for the amendment? Councillor Axon.
For.
Councillor Bailey.
4.
Councillor Blewett.
4.
Councillor Butler.
4.
Councillor Clark.
4.
Councillor Cockrell.
4.
Councillor Crampton.
Against.
Councillor Crisp. Councillor Crisp.
You're on mute, Jerry.
Councillor Crisp. I'll come back to Councillor Crisp.
It's on mute.
Councillor Crooks.
Against.
Councillor Davis.
4.
Councillor Delaney.
4.
Councillor Dawn.
Against.
Councillor Drage.
4.
Councillor Farmer.
Against.
Councillor Forster.
Strongly against.
Councillor Kinnell.
Strongly 4.
Councillor Lamb.
4.
Councillor Makepeace Brown.
4.
Councillor Neighbour.
4.
Councillor Oliver.
4.
Councillor Quarterman.
4.
Councillor Radley.
On the fine balance of judgment, 4.
Councillor Smith.
4.
Councillor Southern.
Against.
Councillor Tomlinson.
Against.
Councillor Wheel.
Against.
Yeah.
Say it again.
Oh, sorry. Against.
Councillor Wildsmith.
4.
Councillor Warlock.
Against.
Councillor Wright.
Against.
Councillor Kennett.
Abstain. Voting was 19 for, 10 against, and 1 abstention. So we now proceed to debate that motion. That amendment, rather.
Chairman, I'll ask the committee clerk to put the motion
back on the
screen
yes.
for members just to see for a few seconds.
Right, you all have that now in front of you. And Councillor Wildsmith, you'd like to speak?
Thank you, Chairman. I don't think anyone can deny there have been people who have been against the scheme, but there have also been a lot of people who are for the scheme. To date, yes, we have some data, but 4 weeks worth of data is not enough to give us a true aspect of what has happened over the time. There's been mention of increased traffic flows down the residential roads. Having a look at the data we have to date, though, taking Clarence Road for an example, it's only had a 0.7% increase in its share of traffic volume. That doesn't mean it's going to be like that the whole time and could go up. We have not had enough time to collect enough data and fully assess the impact. I also, furthermore, think it's a great shame we've got to this point tonight. There was no need to get here, and this council should have been working all together, cross-party, to make this scheme the best success it can do. And I would implore all members to do so across the coming weeks up until the end of October if this motion passes, to engage with people, listen to their concerns. Just because someone has concerns doesn't mean something needs pulling. We can listen to those concerns, we can address them and create solutions to them. There's great benefits to the scheme as well, as many retailers have said so, with some seeing increases in trade. For those reasons, I really do see that we need to continue on with this scheme, assess more data, gather more data, but in a fair and accurate way. And when we do that data, to look at it and try and make it not fit our current points of view. And when we do that, and we will know the data is true, it is fair, and it is accurate. And at that point, we can make a fully informed decision, and we can move forward in the correct possible way.
Thank you, Councillor Wildsmith. Councillor Makepeace-Brown, and could I just ask that the indicator light be used?
Can we have the amendment up on the screen again, please, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, arrange that.
Thank you, Chairman. So I voted against the original initiation of this scheme at full council last time, and I would have been delighted to have not had it put in place, but democratically this council voted to implement it. This is in the middle of my ward. It's impossible to please everyone, so I am very torn, and all I can do is work with the evidence that is produced in order that the scheme can prove itself safe and economically beneficial or not. That's my job on this council. Unless this council allows for that, we are, in my opinion, negligent of wasting taxpayers' money, and more importantly, an opportunity to help Fleet High Street get back onto its feet if possible. The scheme was rushed because of the current COVID situation. We have a good team of cross-party councillors and good officers who are working on this scheme to improve it, to get the right information out there, to get the right evidence of whether it is working or it is not. We do have to work with residents. We want to work with residents. We want to work with businesses. And anyone that's got an issue, we want to understand if it can be dealt with. And if it can't, then that is another decision to make. But unless we allow the assessment to happen properly, I feel we can't defend any action to keep or remove the scheme, and we must be able to defend, as a council, every decision we make. If, once we assess in full, we do need to pull the scheme, Hampshire County Council have assured us that they will reserve and reverse quickly, and what we want now is crucial for the Hampshire County Councillor, who is our representative in this area, to support us if we do need to do that. So 3 weeks review was deferred because this motion was brought to council and they needed to work on that. And the last thing I would say, just in a comment that was made earlier, if anyone voting on this scheme and this situation tonight is voting to be seen to be popular for being re-elected next year, they should be ashamed of themselves for not doing their job whilst they are currently in place. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Makepeace-Brown. And you mentioned the question of money there. You'll be aware that Enterprise M3 elected Hart Council. They were backing it, and if we stopped it now, they would not pay any money towards it. Right, Councillor Forster.
Thank you, Chairman. First thing I'd say is the previous councillor talked about HCC. They've confirmed they would remove the scheme within 3 to 5 days, and there's an urgency to do that. This is a Hart scheme. This was decided to be implemented by Hart, led by Councillors Cockrell and Oliver, and CCH and Lib Dems, who are now acting altogether, it appears, whipped. Previous councillors made comments about not voting politically. Well, this appears to be 100% political, rather than listening to residents because it's about the residents. Sorry, Councillor Crisp is unmuted and isn't treating this correctly. So could you either mute or could you, Chairman, ask him to leave the meeting?
He is now muted.
Thank you.
All right, Councillor Forster.
Yeah, he's breaking the code of conduct. The council has already wasted a small amount of money because of the £148,000 plus an extra 30,000 from Fleet Bidden and Fleet Town Council, they've bought a lot of planters, etc., and painted some lines. They're about to waste the majority of that on the next phase. I think it is a real waste. Some of the things that could and should have been done, like putting in extra pedestrian crossings, speed calming, etc., we're told now can't be done. It's kicking the can down the road, and more importantly, it is an absolute denial of democracy in preventing discussion on the merits of the motion that we put forward. Councillor Oliver sits on Fleet Town Council, on Hart District Council, and on Fleet Bid. He's a director on Fleet Bid. He has a history of not listening until forced to do so. On the Harlington project, for one. On Shapley Heath, for another. There are probably a lot of other examples. CCH has a history of doing what they think is in their interests. This is not in their interests. This is not in residents' interests, and it's not in business interests. And the evidence that we've seen to date, which other councillors seem to be completely ignoring if they're CCH or Lib Dem, demonstrates that. We should go back to the original motion. I could not support this motion. I could not vote for it. It is absolutely ludicrous. And the fact that Councillor Makepeace-Brown and some others, Councillor Axon, for instance, appear to be reading prepared speeches demonstrates that this is a stitch-up, that this is something that they'd organised with the Lib Dems. I think it's just disgusting that they're not listening to residents and to the businesses who are saying withdraw it now before there are accidents, before businesses go broke, and before the mountain of complaints becomes...
Councillor, have you 3 minutes?
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Delaney.
Sorry, Chairman.
Yes.
It's Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, I wondered if you'd come back.
Named me. Can I actually respond to his comment?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. He accused me of not listening. Well, obviously, that's one of the main reasons is I'm not a narcissist, okay, and I don't like to hear myself speak all the time. But I would take issue. The only reason any of councillors are on the district council.
I need to say for PDB. My request was to all councillors before we get back on air. I'm sorry about this, but we do have a legal duty to stop until we've got the public feedback again.
That's the old video. There you go, you're live again.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, Councillor Delaney, I think.
Sorry, Chairman. Can I finish what I was saying, please?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Please.
As I was saying, after the personal attacks, which are repeated over a couple of years, which amount to sustained bullying, I find it completely unacceptable. We are representing the views of businesses and residents, and it seems that the CCH and the Lib Dems are not doing so. They're kicking the can down the road. It's unacceptable. I hope they stop resorting to personal attacks. Importantly, they've alluded that this is a Hampshire County Council scheme. It is not. This scheme was run, in terms of clarification, it was applied for by Hart. That was a decision made by Hart's cabinet members, Councillor Cockrell and Councillor Oliver, I am told by the chief executives. The cabinet supported that decision. The decision was made to apply for the grant of 148,000. That was successful, and they requested Hampshire deliver the scheme to their specification. It seems incredible to me that they're trying to assign responsibility to Hampshire County Council and myself, when of course there are other councillors who cover our area of Hart. There are 5 county councillors. I'm not the only one, although I cover the area of Fleet that this scheme is in. But trying to state that Hampshire County Council is in some way responsible is completely and utterly wrong. And I have that confirmation from the officers responsible for this scheme and the chief executives. So please, can I respectfully suggest that they take responsibility for themselves and their own scheme. This scheme is not wanted by residents and a large number of businesses and should be stopped. I cannot support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Forster. Councillor Crampton.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to repeat what I said at the beginning, that my motivation for bringing the original motion was not party political at all. It was simply because we had been contacted by such a volume of residents that we felt we had to do something. We had to speak for them, not political at all. And I went round Fleet High Street on Monday and spoke to some shopkeepers, and what they were saying nearly drove me to tears. They are going to go out of business if this carries on. That's why I brought it, not party political. I really, really mean that. I was also going to say that if anybody had read the Grimby report, Bill Grimby was on a webinar recently, and he said that pedestrianisation is only part of regeneration of the high street and revitalisation of the high street, that just a pop-up scheme with no thought behind it, no traffic management and really no real safety concerns is not going to revitalise the high street. What he said was it needs a total revamp, a total rethink. And that's what I've been talking to the business owners about and the residents, because the residents want to support a thriving high street, but this is not the way to do it.
Thank you, Councillor Crampton. I have Councillor Davies.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd first just like to refute the point that CCH aren't taking responsibility and aren't actually listening to residents and retailers. I think that's the wrong thing to imply. But I think there is a lot of doubts being circulated about the validity of the data that we are using. So I think it's our responsibility to make sure that we get hold of clear, actionable data. So I'm happy to take this as a personal objective to speak to Hart, because I think we've had data from BID and we've had some data from Hart and we've had data from the retailers, but data just from Hart, looking to speak to every retailer that's affected with clear, quantifiable measures that are identified to either look at success or failure, that we can actually look at and measure and come up with a clear outcome. I think we should be surveying every resident on all of the streets affected. So far, it's not been done in a way which I think everyone is satisfied is reliable. So I'm happy to take the responsibility to speak to Hart to make sure that that is actually conducted. And then we will hopefully have data that everyone is happy with, and that will give us a definitive view either way on whether this should actually be carried on or not. But one point I'd like to make, and I agree with Councillor Crampton, as you know, I've been quite vocal with my concern over the scheme, that it shouldn't have been rushed and it should be thought through, and that pedestrianisation is only one element of creating a more thriving street scene. But I'm happy to be corrected here, but I think the money for this has actually come from Conservative central government and from Hampshire County to Conservative Hampshire County Council. And the timelines that were put on this that forced Hart to make a decision were actually very, very short and actually didn't allow us to properly consider how we would implement it. So I actually completely agree with your view there, but I think you have to look back to where the money, the source of the money first came from, and some of the limitations that were imposed on us in having to make a speedy decision. But I think, yes, we're all debating the validity of the data and whether it's a success or not. So let's do the right thing. Let's follow governance and let's get some decent data that we can all get behind. Thank you. And I'd also like to say then, as a councillor, I would be really happy then to pull this scheme, and I would absolutely look to our county councillor to support us in doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davies. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. Just for the avoidance of doubt, I am reading from notes that I've made during this meeting, nothing pre-prepared. I'm not blind to the impact of the scheme on the residents of Fleet at all, but not being a Fleet councillor, I don't see that firsthand, so I can't comment on that directly. I'll take it from Fleet councillors that there are those resident concerns and the volume of it. My main point, as I stated at the acceptance of the amendment, was that the scheme has not yet been fully implemented. I think it's premature to terminate it now. The evidence that's been presented to members from traders is not conclusive. Some are clearly in favour, some are against. One business included on the list, as another member said, has actually since said they're absolutely in favour. So there's clearly some confusion there about the independence of those lists. So some independent surveying is needed. I visited Fleet today to view the current state of the scheme. I spoke informally to a small number of shoppers because there weren't that many people around in the middle of the day on a rainy day. Around half thought the scheme was a big improvement, but half thought it was actually detrimental. There didn't seem to be any middle ground. Among the comments of those saying it was detrimental, one said, it's dead now. They actually openly stated they missed the bustle of traffic. I'm not sure you can do anything about that, but you know, that was their view. A common comment was that the plastic barriers look awful. And a couple of people said they had trouble finding the right car park because they normally access it from the other end that they normally do. So they didn't know where to park. So I think those red and white barriers do make it look like it's an industrial landscape and need to go as soon as possible, because people didn't really understand that that wasn't the final appearance. And some clear signposting to the nearest car park as you enter the sort of area would clearly help. But I think that terminating when it hasn't been fully implemented, I think is a mistake. So I'm happy to give it another week or two.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Crampton, you've spoken already, but I understand you've got a short.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I've got a point of information. It seems as though people are under the impression that the only thing this money could be spent on was pedestrianisation, and that is not true. It could have been spent on cycleways, and I know Councillor Forster had an oven-ready deal for a cycleway should it been allowed to be spent on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Radley.
Not another Conservative oven-ready deal. I mean, what can I say? Right, I'm confused. Unfortunately, I'm going to reference Councillor Forster again, but I'm hoping he can explain something to me. Last time this got debated, myself and Councillor Davies were very adamantly against implementing this scheme. Councillor Forster abstained. And then when he got put under pressure for why he abstained, he said it's because he had a veto on the scheme, being a Hampshire County Councillor. But then, 2 or 3 minutes ago, he explained to everyone that Hampshire County Council aren't actually responsible for implementing this scheme. So could he explain to me and the many residents who ask me, why did he abstain? Why did you abstain last time round, Councillor Forster?
Chairman, would you like me to answer that?
Yes, if it's quick.
Absolutely. There's on my Facebook profile, there's a very succinct answer to it. As I said at the time, I abstained in the original meeting because at the time, Fleet Town Council had not indicated whether they supported the scheme. My veto applies from a road safety viewpoint. And if there's evidence that road safety is compromised, then I will absolutely request that the scheme is either modified to mitigate that road safety or removed. And I've said that all along. It's sad that the councillor chose not to raise it and keeps raising this point. It's been perfectly well explained. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Forster. Councillor Dawn.
Thank you, Chairman. I understand there's still problems with the live feed. Do you want me to continue or do you want to pause for a moment?
Pause if it's really a problem.
Right, Chairman, we've got it. I've got all the officers watching saying it's live at the moment.
I've got it working. It's live.
And so it is working. I accept it may be dropping in and dropping out, but we are monitoring the dropping in and dropping out. At the moment, it buffers a bit, then carries up. It's still running.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Phillips. Councillor Gordon.
Right, to speak to the motion or the revised motion, I think as councillors, we need to take a very clear and balanced view of the different views of our wider community, that's residents and business and everything else. And our role is to exercise judgment. We're all passionate about Fleet and the wider area of Hart, and I don't doubt that from what everybody's said this evening. But when you look back and look at the evidence that we have available, the pre-trial survey that was conducted of the very small area just around it was against this. If you look at our surveys that goes out over a much wider area and it's a true random sample, that's very much against it. If you look at the Hart data that's been collected so far on the Fleet roads, that's very much against it. You look at I'll call it the Baker-led survey of businesses that arrived today, that's very much against it. And I add to that the local feedback I've had to me personally, where people are deeply against it and cannot see the point and the benefit for Fleet as a whole. So I think we have plenty of evidence already to show that this is a deeply unpopular and impractical scheme. If you look at what was being discussed a little earlier, if we move this forward another 3 weeks, we still have no objective criteria to judge it on. There has been 4 weeks now to sort out proper KPIs that could have been reported to councillors on a weekly basis. It hasn't happened. I think we need to look very carefully at the long-term structural change that's been accelerated by COVID, and that's been mentioned by people this evening. Many people are not going back to the high street. Behaviours change. People walk less and browse less because they just want to pop in, do something, buy something quickly and maybe stop for coffee. If they're going to buy something, they're going to do it online a lot of the time. We have to accept that and accept that we're going to have a smaller high street that does things differently. It has to become a different place. The practical issues of trying to create a pedestrianised area in the centre of Fleet are almost insurmountable. If you look at it, pedestrianisation is actually about parking. And that may sound counterintuitive, but it is. It's all about the journey from home to where you're going. You need to be able to get in your car, drive to Fleet somewhere, access the car park easily, get out, walk to wherever you're going and do whatever you are going to do. If you can't do that, you won't go there. You'll go somewhere else, or you'll sit in front of your computer and order it from online. I note that Fleet Bid refers to the Grimsey report, and I've had a good read of that. And if you have a look on page 37, one of the key things he notes is that harsh parking regimes have reduced the attractiveness of high streets. And that is one of the things that we've been talking about for over a year now. Let's get something done on the parking. People ask for alternative schemes that are quick and easy to sort out. If we'd done the cheap part of the free parking that we asked for this time last year, we might not be in quite such a problem that we are now. So there's a lot of very good ideas out there that can come forward. To me, the extra space that is created by this scheme is not actually needed. The pavements are perfectly wide enough, and it didn't stop or discourage people from returning before the trial. I do think that the way the motion has been amended is contrary to what we stood for as Conservatives, as a group, in our democratic principles. And I think it's frankly outrageous that instead of being able to come to a definite decision this evening, based on the plethora of evidence that is in front of us, that this can is being kicked down the road again. I will have a problem explaining that to my residents, but I will no doubt have to explain it, and I shall try my best. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Dawn. Councillor Oliver. Councillor Oliver.
Sorry, Chairman, I had my hand up from the previous time.
Okay. Right. Councillor Cockrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just trying to get my mouse in order and hit the right button. Yes, just really wanted to come back briefly, Mr. Chairman, on a couple of points, just to, I guess, give a bit of clarity. I don't want to go back round the circle, but just for members' understanding, we were the scheme did originate within Hart as there was an opportunity from the Department for Transport to do such schemes. One of the stipulations behind the schemes was that they needed support from county council and other bodies as well, and that was part of the issue with going to the LEP for the money. So Hampshire County Council have supported us in the scheme, and indeed Councillor Humby, the portfolio holder at Hampshire, who has responsibility for this, has agreed that we can carry on with the additional planters, etc., if we choose to do so. Obviously, that is going to be dependent largely upon what we decide this evening. In terms of data, one of the problems that I think officers are currently struggling with is that there is conflicting information coming from retailers. There is a group of retailers who are very pro the scheme. There is a group of retailers very anti the scheme, which is not particularly surprising, but perhaps these things are always controversial. I have asked the officers if we can try and find some truly independent sources of data. So not necessarily from the bid, not necessarily from interested parties on Fleet Road, not even necessarily from officers, but maybe the CBI or Chambers of Commerce or somebody like that who can actually provide us with verifiable data rather than letters being signed and then people saying that they weren't actually willing to sign the letter and had their name added to it, things like that. As the cabinet member responsible for at least phase 3 of the planters and stuff, you know, I will always listen to what council says and take their views into consideration. And I've been having lots of conversations with Fleet members about this over several weeks, and I know very well what their concerns are. And if we cannot resolve the issues that there are, and I'm not pretending there are issues, if we cannot resolve them in the next few weeks and the data is not supporting the scheme, then I will do what the data is telling me and what the and respond to the situation. My point is simply that I don't think at this stage that the data is actually clear. I think it is 50% one way, 50% the other. And I'm not in any way trying to denigrate those who are telling me of the problems, because I absolutely understand that some businesses will have issues, residents will have issues. My point is there is an opportunity to work through those issues rather than simply throw our hands up in the air and say it can't be done. And just as a final point, looking ahead, Councillor Crampton, I think, makes a very interesting point in relation to regeneration of high streets. I would agree pedestrianisation is not the be all and end all. I would also agree that in other situations we would not have done it this way. But what this is an opportunity for us as a council and as a community in Fleet and Hart to see whether or not pedestrianisation of some form might be a way in which we can revitalise Fleet High Street as we move into a new era. So, as I said before, Mr. Chairman, I would hope that the council gives us, myself, the officers, the working group, time to fully collate the data and come to an informed decision. And you know, once that has happened, we will be able to report all of that back to council, who I'm sure will take whatever view it is that of whichever decision we've taken. But I do hope we can actually make a sensible decision based on the evidence, rather than continue to go round the houses with my data says this, your data says that, and really not make any particular headway on this issue. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Cockrell. I'll let you go with the 3 minutes because you are the cabinet member.
Apologies, Mr. Chairman. You should be stricter with me.
No. Accept generosity when offered, please. Councillor Delaney, if you have not spoken before, then speak now.
Speak now?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Yeah, just a couple of points from me. We voted for this at full council at the end of July, as we've already said, and I voted against it. And I still have quite a few reservations of my own. But I do think this is a political stunt, and really this decision should have been made by the cross-party working group. We could have reviewed the data as it came in. Councillor Dawn has just commented that the motion has been brought forward because the data from Baker's petition, HDC traffic reports, HDC collation of emails, etc., is showing that the scheme is actually detrimental. However, from my recollection, the motion was put forward before we had any of that data. So I don't actually see how it can be based on that. And the only thing that I can see that they've based their motion on is their own survey.
Chairman, a point of information, if I may, please.
Briefly,
Yep. In terms of the cross-party working group, it's notable that the cross-party working group decided to refer this to full council. It could have taken a decision previously and chose not to, suggesting that the cross-party working group can reach any decision when it chooses to refer things to full council, I think seems to be a little bit odd.
Councillor Blewett.
Chairman, do I have a right to reply to Councillor Delaney?
On what basis?
She mentioned me and suggested that we had made a decision in advance of the evidence.
Did she name you? Yes, briefly.
I'd just like to clarify that obviously we had our petition, a lot of feedback from residents that has then been supported by the later evidence. Nobody's sitting here trying to make things up, and I do feel that's not the best way to try and approach the debate.
Thank you, Councillor Dawn. Councillor Blewett.
Thank you, Chairman. I apologise for my speech earlier. I thought we were actually debating the amendment at that stage. So I won't go through it all again. We have to consider the situation with disabled access, and we need to allow for that. And ideally,
it won't be possible, but ideally this matter should have been sorted out by a local referendum. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Councillor Blewett. Councillor Farmer.
Thank you, Chairman. I actually want to just add to what Councillor Dawn has just said. Yet again, as a Conservative group, we've been accused of a political stunt, or in actual fact, as Councillor Crampton said very early on, we were contacted by many residents and businesses. We undertook the survey, and right the way through over the entire month, even in the early stages, the overwhelming majority, 81%, and it has remained consistent throughout, has been against this scheme. So we put this motion forward on the basis of contacts from residents and businesses who felt so strongly about the effect that it was having on them. It's been further supported by our survey. In addition, the response to the Fleet Road Mail corresponds almost exactly in terms of the level of objection, as does the initial leaflet drop on Albert Street and on to some businesses on Fleet Road again, which was again around the 70% level. The data is consistent. We were contacted. There were huge concerns raised. We didn't just want to take anecdotal evidence. We wanted to investigate further, hence the survey. That has remained consistent. We believe very strongly we are representing the views of local residents and local businesses, not least those that we have personally spoken to on the high street. One gentleman on his knees pleading with us for this to be removed. This is no game. This is no political stunt. This is people's livelihoods we're talking about here. And we have to take it seriously, and we have to stop this political claptrap accusing one another of what we're trying to do. We're trying to stand up for the views of local residents and local businesses on a scheme that we believe, in our view and on their opinions, is not working and that is detrimental to the residents and the businesses of Fleet. That's all I wanted to say, Chairman. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Councillor Farmer. Councillor Southern.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As a councillor who is not a Fleet councillor, and I don't use Fleet very much, but I do go there from time to time, I've read all the evidence that has been supported to us in various petitions, various surveys, and things like that. And I do believe,
Councillor Southern, we have a point of order from Councillor Neighbour.
What is it?
Councillor Neighbour.
Mr. Chairman, I apologise. I was trying to use the chat facility. We are going around in circles. We've resorted to name calling on more than one occasion. I don't think we're doing the public a good service. Can the motion be now put?
Councillor Neighbour, I was speaking, and I would respectfully wish that I could say what I was going to say. I'm not a Fleet councillor. I've read all the evidence that's been portrayed to us by Mr. Jaggard and by various other people. I really do feel I'm independent in this. But when you realise that large proportion of people in Fleet, the traders, the retailers and the residents are largely against this project, I think it is quite clear that the residents and the people of Fleet do not want this to continue. The evidence from my point of view, and I'm an independent voice on this, I'm looking at this as an apolitical way, that the people of Fleet don't want this. And I think we should can it straight away.
Thank you, Councillor Southern. And we have Councillor Crooks. Yes, 2 speakers left. Councillor Crooks.
Yes, thank you. I think there is a lot of evidence from the survey that's been referred to. A very significant number of respondees, a very high proportion of Those who were asked to respond did respond, 5%, which I think is a very good response, an overwhelming outcome from it. If we're going to do yet more data gathering, coming back to what the cabinet member said, and I don't use his name so he doesn't need to speak again, I'm sure he's delighted with that. I am not at all sure how in the next few weeks we will gather objective data which we can all agree is objective, on which, and I think that's a laudable objective. How can we gather that data which we can all agree is objective and which is clear and clearly points us in a direction? Coming back to what the cabinet member said, I think it's important that the council, if we're going to go ahead and delay the decision now, which seems inevitable, I don't think it's right, but I think it looks like it's going to be inevitable. I think we need to, in a hurry, find a way of gathering data using some kind of mechanism which we all can agree is fair and objective. One of a member earlier, again not mentioning any names, said that she was prepared to go around and ask a lot of questions. That's not the way to do it. We have to find a completely independent organisation that can do a proper survey, properly put together, on which we can all say, we agree with the way that's done, we understand the outcome, and the outcome is clear. I urge then the cabinet member to find a way urgently, like tomorrow, of getting that done. Don't leave it for another week or another 2 weeks, otherwise it won't happen. I'm done.
Thank you, Councillor Crooks. I'll take 2 more points. Councillor Davies and Councillor Crisp, and then I will ask Councillor Quarterman to sum up on his motion. Councillor Davies. Councillor Davies.
Thank you, Chairman. Very, very briefly, just a practical point really to say I agree we need to move very, very quickly to collect this data. I agree I wouldn't recommend myself or anyone else personally going around and speaking to residents and retailers. I think actually it would be money well spent to commission an objective market research company to undertake that research for us so that we can be confident that it is actually reliable and data that's not collected by any interested party in Hart, but at a completely objective third party. And actually, and I know Councillor Forster mentioned this point earlier, we do need to reinstate the working group. And can I just say it's a cross-party working group, and there have been Conservatives in that working group ever since in every meeting that I have been in. It's implied somehow that that group has only been made up of CCH and Lib Dem councillors, but absolutely let's reinstate that meeting as soon as possible, and certainly I'm happy to take away the action tomorrow to speak to officers to see how we can tackle getting a comprehensive robust survey up and running of residents and retailers affected. Thank you.
And finally, Councillor Crisp. Councillor Crisp. Councillor Crisp. Okay. Councillor Quarterman, you want to sum up on your motion?
Thank you very much. I think I said in the debate when we discussed this in July that I agreed with lots of the things that Councillor Dawn said, but I came to exactly the opposite conclusion. I feel similarly, and also with what Councillor Crooks said, because he said a lot of very sensible points as well. The point here is that we voted for this in July. There were differences of opinion. We debated them. We decided to go for it. It's not a perfect scheme because it's being done quickly. It's being done under difficult circumstances. It is, however, wrong to immediately pull it before you've had a chance to properly assess it. And the reason that it starts to look like a political stunt is because MPs and campaigns and social media campaigns against this appeared almost from the day it came in. We need to do this properly. We need to assess it. I don't represent Fleet. I come from Yateley. I don't feel strongly one way or the other, but I do feel is that we have to do these things properly and we have to properly assess it. Surveys which ask kind of loaded questions or questions that expect a certain answer are not good data. We need to do this properly. We need to get good objective data so that we know what the right answer is. That's why I worked hard to come up with an amendment that would allow us to take note of the concerns, because they are genuine, and I don't deny that there are genuine concerns, but we have to have a balanced view, and we have to have a view on the positives as well, which may take longer to become apparent. That is why I proposed the amendment. That is why I think we should allow ourselves to take just a little bit more time and assess this properly.
Thank you. And Councillor Crampton, since you introduced the motion in the first place, you can have the last word.
Thank you, Chairman. I think I've said quite a lot of what I was going to say, but I'll summarise it. Regeneration has to take precedent in order to reverse the trend of a declining high street, and that is Bill Grimby, who's an expert. Pedestrianisation is only part, and it ought to be part of a full regeneration programme. I was also going to say that it's not needed for social distancing. When I've visited Fleet High Street, very, very few people are walking down the middle of the road. Most people are managed to socially distance quite well on the pavement. The only time I was concerned about social distancing was when I saw the photographs of the vegan market, where people were congregating around one end. And I think if you are going to have one-off events, you've got to have marshals there to make sure social distancing occurs. There are other places where pedestrianisation has failed and is being removed, and I've got some examples of that, but I won't bore you with it. But certainly there's two places I've visited, and neither place is pedestrianisation working, and they're about to reverse it. The other thing you said was this was political. I'm afraid in some places that I've spoken to, there are people who are saying they are going to stand at May elections on anti-pedestrianisation platform, which is no benefit to us as Conservatives. They were my points. I strongly believe this is wrong, and I will continue to support businesses and residents in the way I feel we should.
Thank you, Councillor Crampton. Right, at last, we're going to move to a vote on this. What are you going to do?
Chairman, the vote is going to be based upon the amended motion. So if you support the amended motion.
Darryl, sorry, Ken Crooks, can you please put up the motion on the screen so everybody knows exactly what they're voting on, please?
Give us a few seconds. Yes.
Thank you.
Chairman, if I can just ask a clarification. So we're voting on this motion, not Councillor Crampton's motion, but this motion, which effectively is Councillor Quarterman's motion. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Correct. Yes.
This is the one that makes the decision.
Point of order and clarification. Sorry, I thought that our previous debate and vote was to vote whether the amendment could be debated. As such, have we as a council agreed that this amendment can become part of the motion? I accept that in reality the votes will all fall into the same place, but there was some confusion earlier in the meeting. I just want clarity on that from the officer.
That was what we voted on about an hour ago.
Yes, Chairman, just to help members clear, the original motion was moved by Councillor Crampton. the motion was then amended by Councillor Quarterman, and by vote you agreed to that should take over as being the substantive motion. So you're now voting, you've had your debate, you're now voting on the factual motion, which is the amended motion in front of you.
Thank you.
It's now the substantive motion.
Yes. Please indicate your response clearly, please. Ambler.
4.
Axon. 4. Bailey.
4.
Blewett.
4.
Butler.
4.
Clark.
4.
Cockerell.
4.
Crampton.
Against.
Crisp.
4.
Crooks.
Against.
Davis.
4.
Delaney.
4.
Can I confirm that was a 4?
Yeah, 4.
Dawn.
Against.
Drage.
4.
Farmer.
Against.
Forster.
Against.
Pinnell.
4.
Lamb.
4.
Makepeace Brown.
4.
Neighbour.
4.
Oliver.
4.
Quarterman.
4.
Bradley.
4.
Smith.
4.
Southern.
Against.
Tomlinson.
Against.
Wheel.
Against.
Wildsmith.
4.
Warlock. Councillor Warlock. Just checking.
Councillor Warlock, you're still muted.
He's not there.
Sharon, I'll come back to her at the end. Councillor Wright.
Against.
Just go back. Councillor Warlock.
She's not there.
Councillor Kennett.
Abstain. Voting was 20 votes for, 9 against, 1 abstain.
Chairman, Councillor Warlock has actually put a message onto the system.
Which I haven't seen.
Right. She's voted against.
Yes, okay.
Okay.
So that would be 24, 10 against, and 1 abstention. So the amended motion is carried. Thank you very much indeed. The next scheduled meeting of Council is 26th of November 2020.
Chairman, I think you've missed an item for outside bodies feedback.
Oh, so yes. Has anybody got any outside bodies speaking? Not on my crib, that's the reason. But yeah. Right. Right, does any member of an outside body have anything they want to report? Councillor Wright, got you down.
Councillor Warlock.
Councillor Warlock, okay. Councillor Warlock. Anybody else got anything you want to say about meetings on outside body? Count to 3. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to end the meeting now. We can report on outside body next meeting.